I have self-worth. No, I don't. I mean, I do. It just depends on how I was treated today. Because self-worth isn't a fixed setting in your brain. It's more like a volume knob that other people keep messing with without asking. And when you zoom into toxic relationships, what you're really seeing isn't just love or conflict. It's a constant negotiation between personal value and emotional hurt. At the start, everything feels normal. Then, something shifts. A comment lands wrong. A boundary gets ignored. A pattern repeats. And suddenly, your emotional pain response kicks in like, hey, that actually hurt. But here's the weird part. Instead of leaving, the brain starts doing cognitive rationalization. It begins building little stories to explain the emotional hurt instead of confronting it directly. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they're just stressed. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is just their communication style. And just like that, justification of others' behavior becomes a kind of emotional protection mechanism. Because the alternative, accepting that someone you care about is harming you, is psychologically heavier than the pain itself. That's where rejection psychology quietly takes over. The brain treats rejection not just as social discomfort, but as threat-level survival input. So instead of processing truth, it shifts into self-protection mechanisms. You start seeing social comparison everywhere. Other people seem to be valued more in their relationships, treated better, respected more. And that comparison quietly distorts perceived value in relationships. You start wondering if this is just the best you can get. And when emotional hurt keeps stacking up, something else kicks in. Emotional denial. Not the dramatic kind, the subtle kind, the it's fine kind. The it wasn't that bad kind. The kind that keeps unhealthy relationship patterns running long after they should have ended. This is where cognitive dissonance shows up. Because two things can't both be true in your mind at once. I am loved and I am being repeatedly hurt. So the brain picks the easier one to survive with. And that's where toxic relationship tolerance forms. Not because someone is okay with pain, but because the mind is actively trying to reduce emotional conflict by lowering standards instead of raising boundaries. You start doing emotional suppression. You avoid conflict. You delay conversations. You choose peace in the moment over clarity in the long term. And slowly, the relationship enters emotional limbo where nothing is resolved, but nothing is fully ended either. It becomes stuck relational cycles. Same argument, same apology, same temporary repair, same repeat. And here's the part people don't like hearing. Forgiveness psychology gets misunderstood. Forgiveness is supposed to be part of healing. But when there's no accountability in relationships, forgiveness turns into enabling behavior. Because if no one is held responsible, then nothing ever has to change. So the system adapts. One person develops over-responsibility and starts managing everything emotionally. The other avoids blame entirely. And blame avoidance becomes the invisible rule of the relationship. Now you've got a loop: emotional pain, rationalization, forgiveness without accountability, and repetition. And inside that loop, trust issues don't just appear, they compound. Attachment and emotional bonding keeps you tied in, even when emotional consequences keep increasing. It becomes a strange equation. Love and tolerance of harm existing at the same time. Compassion without boundaries. Forgiveness without change. Understanding without protection. At some point, emotional awareness starts trying to break through. You feel it. Introspection starts quietly asking, why am I accepting this? But psychological protection strategies kick in fast. Your mind builds protective cognitive narratives like, they'll change eventually, or it's not that bad, or I can handle it. And that's the core trap. Hurt avoidance behavior disguised as patience. Because every time you avoid confrontation, you're not actually reducing pain, you're just postponing emotional consequences. Meanwhile, relationship dynamics stay the same. No boundary setting, no accountability, no repair. Just temporary calm before the next emotional consequence hits. And here's where the real tension sits. Forgiveness and healing only work when responsibility is acknowledged. Otherwise, you're not healing, you're just looping. So the actual turning point is emotional honesty. Calling out harmful behavior, facing truth acknowledgement instead of denial of problems, saying clearly, this hurt me, and it cannot keep happening, not as blame for punishment, but as responsibility for change. Because holding others responsible isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And holding yourself responsible doesn't mean self-blame tendencies or self-punishment. It means emotional responsibility, choosing boundaries, choosing clarity, choosing self-correction mindset instead of endless tolerance. That balance is what breaks relationship stagnation and emotional limbo. That's what turns stuck relational cycles into relational repair or into clean endings when repair isn't possible. And yes, vulnerability in relationships is scary. Emotional courage is uncomfortable. But long-term emotional well-being depends on something simple. You stop confusing love with acceptance of mistreatment. Because real self-growth mindset isn't about enduring more pain. It's about breaking harmful cycles even when they feel familiar. So if you take anything from this, it's this. Emotional truth-facing will hurt in the short term, but it's the only thing that stops emotional suppression from turning into a lifelong pattern. And yeah, if you like this kind of content, do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and share it. It helps more than you think, and it tells the algorithm we're not just screaming into the void.